Hello, everybody. Just welcome back. Just had a few things I wanted to talk about. First thing that's really cool is that the Flying Pig Games website, they've updated the old school tactical page with the most updated rulebook, which is version 5.25. So the one that I had was version 4. I thought I had a 4.2 or 4.3 floating around, but I couldn't find it. So this was nice to see come out. There's really not too much different in here than the old one, except it does show some of the new graphics. So I already know that the module I've been working on, I already knew it was going to be out of date a little bit graphics wise because it had new graphics, and I don't know when they'll be releasing the updated to those of us who purchased the print and play. So my module might not have updated graphics for a really long time. So we'll talk more about my module here in a minute. But just looking through the rules, like I said, not much has changed. It wasn't like they had to rewrite much. Some extra things were added in just for clarification. I didn't really compare it line by line, if you will, but just a couple things I noticed. Like I don't remember an unmanned counter before. May have been there. I've seen so many counters lately. Some of the artwork for like captured and things like that is a little bit different. One thing that was different was red firepower instead of a firepower number with like a little triangle behind it. There was another rule. I didn't remember seeing it here. Let me see. Let me find it real quick. I don't remember reading it in the old book. Like I said, I didn't compare. I was just happy to get this and kind of flipped through it and was like, oh, there's really not much I really need to worry about. Map edge counter looked a little bit different. The move fire was a little bit different. Oh no, I mean that was the same. I was just trying to think here. Just flip through. I mean, if like I said, if you look, there's not much different. I'm just trying to find the one rule that really stood out to me as new. Dun, 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 dun. Oh wait, what's this? Pivot. I think that's new. Guns pivot. Oh yeah, that was something new. The old counters for some of these crew served weapons didn't have a facing, and now it looks like the crew served weapons have a facing. I always thought that was a little interesting because I'm so used to crew served weapons having a, this is the direction I'm shooting kind of a thing, and then they shoot 90 degrees off left right from the center line of the weapon. And the counters that I had here in the print and play didn't show a direct facing for like the AT anti-tank guns. So I would be left with the assumption they were a 360-degree weapon, which is kind of cool because I mean a lot of those guns appear to be light enough that they could just lift it and turn them real quick. But now they do have front facing, so that makes, well, the unmanned doesn't really help with that, but now there's actual a counter for showing where they're unmanned. And this was the other one too. I hadn't read too much into this to see if it was in the old one. It just struck me as it might be new, but an acquired target. So firing again with the same unit on the same vehicle makes it an acquired target. An acquired target modifier is +1 on the to hit die roll. I don't remember seeing counters for that, and I thought I had copied all the counters into the game. So that might be new, or might have been mentioned in the rules but didn't quite have a counter for it. Now there's a counter. So that's cool. Let's see, just looking. I mean, that was probably the biggest thing that jumped out. A little bit different picture on their combat example. Some offboard artillery stuff. Looks like some line of more. Looks like they spend a lot more time maybe fleshing out line of sight. It seems like every time I look through one of the rule books, the line of sight section gets to be a little bit bigger. And I know originally Kickstarter was saying it'd be 16 pages of rules, or up to 21 pages of rules. But to be fair, the core system itself doesn't take up much. You could still squeeze into 16. Just a lot of these points, I like to see more bullet points here. It just helps clarify things. So anyway, the new rule book is out. So if you want to compare the two rule books, you go side by side. Like I said, after I'd read the rule book, like I think I've read through it like almost 3 times. You still forget things. I'm not good at memorizing everything, but I didn't feel like reading through the rule book one more time. I said, that's great, a new version of the rules is out. I'll use it, but I'm not reading the whole thing again. Anyway, just sharing that for those who were interested. Let's talk about Vassal. Okay, so I had a problem with my computer, and I thought I backed up a lot of stuff, which I did. I backed up quite a bit. Turns out I didn't back up the module for my old school tactical East front. So, I mean, on the good news, I had kept all my graphics and cutouts and everything that I had made. So, like, the chart here. Shane Logan said there was a newer chart than this. This is I got off his Facebook, so I don't know if he had a newer than this one. How recent this is. So I mean, like, a lot of the stuff I had to make the module are still floating around. Just the module itself I lost, which is a shame, because what's interesting is, oh, where's it at? I had, oh, where did I put it? Might still be backed up somewhere. I thought I had it here as well. Oh, don't tell me I lost that too. I had one of the saved games for my old school tactical East front. So I had the save game hidden away somewhere. I think that's still on my Dropbox. So I thought I had moved everything over to Dropbox, and once I got done bringing the computer back up, I couldn't find the actual module. So had a bit of a crying moment. I was like, oh, just when I started to really figure out how to do certain things. So I know I put a couple videos up for turn 1, turn 2 setup and things like that, and it appears that's probably going to be the last from old school tactical until I actually get the board game, and hopefully about that time they'll put out the Vassal module. So my wife's like, well, just rebuild it, which I might rebuild it. I just don't know when the actual Vassal module is coming. And the only reason, because someone asked me this in a comment, they're like, hey, can I have your old school tactical module? I wasn't going to give it away simply because I didn't get permission to, like, make it. I mean, you can make anything you want for personal use. And I was putting it together for my playtest pieces, but I didn't have permission from Shane to hand it out, and I didn't want to go handing out, my Vassal module when maybe they weren't ready for that kind of stuff to go out. And I didn't want to, go against whatever they had coming out. And the reason I think they have one coming is Mark Walker in one of his posts talked about somebody who was playtesting a solo scenario, and this, I think this Vance Strickland here, it says here Vassal mod, and they got Vance Strickland. So I believe that in my mind says they have a Vassal module done, and it will be coming out at some point. So I may make my Vassal module again. Mostly it was just a good learning experience, learn how to do different things within Vassal. Very cool. I'm not very smart at some of the stuff, but I had enough of a module that the game was playable in a way that I thought would work for me. Well, what's weird though is I had actually started working on another Vassal module at the time that I was having some issues. As I was going through Flying Pig Games and I was debating on getting Yaw magazine, I saw a video from the Kev Hipshot. He works, but he runs like the big board gaming, and he was doing a little review of the game Mark Walker did through Tiny Battle Publishing, I think that's what it's called. I wasn't really going to talk too much about that, but since I'm here, what is it? Tiny Battle Publishing. And Mark had put out a game, Sticks and Stones. So Kev Hipshot did a review on this, and it sounds like a pretty fun game. So I thought, oh, okay, I'll look into this. one of the things that he mentioned about the game that he had purchased it and it was sent. He said the graphics were a little bit fuzzy. I didn't quite know what that meant because I'm so used to seeing a lot of really crisp counter art from a lot of games that Mark Walker did. But this Tiny Battle Publishing is like, I think it said it was a sister company to Flying Pig Games. Because my first thought was, well, why would Mark release a game through a different company and not his own? But I guess they are related somehow. Not maybe familial, but just says it's a sister company. So I thought, well, that's cool. I'll check it out. And the Sticks and Stones, I have a lot of tactical style games, and I thought, well, I'll still check this out. But what I saw over here, Winter Thunder, it just struck me as interesting because it's a Battle of the Bulge game. And there's a little history here. It started with, let's see, it's Brian Train, and he did Autumn Mist, which I never played, and then he did a Summer Lightning, which I've seen, and I thought that looked pretty cool. And I think it had a Vassal module, but I didn't have like all the charts and things I needed to play it. But I haven't seen the Balkan Gambit, so I said, well, that's kind of neat. And I saw this here. The counters look good, and it interested me because it's not a tactical level. I've got a lot of tactical. I like platoon level, individual tank level, squad level, that kind of stuff. And I've been interested in getting these operational level games. Well, there's another guy, I think John Butterfield. Let's pull this up. And he's done D-Day at Omaha Beach, which I thought looked pretty cool. And they did like D-Day at Tarawa and D-Day at Peleliu. And another one that he did, which I think this is his most recent, this Enemy Action Ardennes. And on YouTube, there's a great playthrough series. I can't remember the person who put it out, but the components for it look really good. I saw, I think, Single-Handed Warfare is a channel on YouTube, was reviewing the counters. And the game here, this is why I bring it up. So for Battle of the Bulge, this Enemy Action had like 3 games in one. There's the 2-player game, then there's a solo set of rules for a German playthrough, and a solo set of rules for Allies. So like if you look through the rules, right here, there's the 2-player solitaire for Allied, solitaire for German. And there's a Vassal module for the 2-player game. So that's cool. That's amazing. Get to try this game out because it looked really, really cool. And my biggest problem right here is this, the price. With Christmas coming, there's no way I can shell out $145 to maybe have a shot at running through the solitaire German rules, as much as I would love to do that. The Vassal module set up for 2-player, and so my understanding is the rules and the cards are very specific to what you're playing. You can't just take the 2-player game and fit it in with the solitaire rules. So a lot of folks I was reading, they said it really feels like 3 games in one. So if you take the average cost of a good war game, and it's $80 a game, you get 3 of those. Well, that's like $240. So $140 for 3 games in one box is actually a pretty good deal. It's just not a pretty good deal right now for me before Christmas. So I said, man, as cool as this looks, maybe I'll try playing the 2-player version and just do the typical, I'll play both sides and run through the cards and learn it. But that brings me back to Tiny Publishing here. When I saw that they had a Battle of the Bulge game, I was like, oh, well, check this out for, price may vary by the time you get here. I'm looking at this. It's the November 11th. Happy Veterans Day to veterans out there. I went and got my free meal at Applebee's. But I was like, oh, look at there. That's a huge cost difference. So obviously this game comes with a lot less components. So I was kind of tempted to get the printed version, but after seeing that Kev Hipshot said that the quality wasn't as great as, say, other games, I thought, well, why don't I just get the print and play? It's half the price. Half the price. I get a Battle of the Bulge game. I get to step my toe into operational wargaming at a fraction of the cost of the big brother that I'd be interested in. So that leads me to the Vassal module that I'm working on here. Oh, here, let's just pull it Vassal. So I said to myself, why don't we make a Winter Thunder Vassal module? And that's what I was working on. And I had started this, yeah, just shortly before I lost the my stuff for Old School Tactical. So I said, well, I'll finish this before I go back. So what I did was I have a save game here with the Battle of the Bulge with all of the units in place. So don't really consider this so much a review for the game. I've only played it little bits just to try out different rules mechanics, and then as I was playing it, I was making changes to my Vassal module to kind of fit the play style of this. I'd say a big difference between this and like Old School Tactical is there's a lot more units. With like Old School Tactical, you might have like 30 tanks, but you know, it might be like 6 Tigers. So I just had to, at least in Vassal, I mean, I just make 1 Tiger and then boom, I have an unlimited amount of Tiger tanks, if you will. Here, all of these are different units. There's only a couple that replicate, and that's down at the brigade level. But most of these divisions are all separate, historically, you know, based divisions. So this was a lot of individual counters that I had to put into the game, and you know, had to track if they had a flipped status, you know, their reduced sides, and oh, except that one apparently. So most of these flip. Great. Ah. So I have to go back and find out why does the 276 German. See, this is why I'm not giving this out to people either. Is every time I come through here, I find great something else that's got to get fixed. So 276. Ah, okay. Since I'm thinking about it, you guys get to see how I do this. That way, if you're out there as a Vassal module designer or thought about it, either A, you can tell me, Eddie, you can do this so much better this way. So organizing my counters, I got a counters, tabbed panels. That was a German. That was an infantry. That's my panel, and then I had my scrollable list. 276th infantry. Here's this flip layer. It flipped to the same one. So 276. Let me come into my graphics. It's on here somewhere. Winter Thunder, into my pre-cut out stuff for Germany. Come all the way down to the 276th. Reduce side. Boom. There's this flip layer. Nice. And it is now saved. So now, let's see if this works. I think I'm missing something. Well, it might all be there. Yeah, okay, so now if I come back down here to the 276, there. No, it's going to make me actually close it out and relaunch it from scratch here. Sometimes you can make changes in the Vassal module and just do like a quick load. Sometimes I got to exit all the way out, come back in to test it. I'm learning that it didn't take. Did I do the wrong unit? Did I hit the save button? I might not have hit save. I thought I hit save. I do that a lot too. Make a change and then forget to hit the save button. There's my German infantry. 276th. Flip layer is reduced. Control F. Oh, I might not have been hitting the Control F key. Let's see. Well, I'm telling it to flip. Yeah. See, that says 276. Just move it and force it to. Boy, that thing is broke good. And that is under the Germans. That's really, really weird. check that out. Oh, I know why. I know why. Say it one more time. I forgot. When you do Vassal, this is one of the pains. When you make a change to like a unit, oops, and German infantry. See, I got these tabs here. Just it looks like a lot, but surprisingly, there's a lot to track here. It might not be as much as like other big games, but it just made sense for me to break it all down. So I got German infantry. But yeah, this is the thing with a Vassal module is you have to, I forgot, you got to bring down the new and improved version of that counter. It doesn't just automatically update what's already out, so you have to bring the new one in. Okay, cool. So we fixed it. I have that saved now. Then what I got to do is I'm going to save that. I'll have to reload that or resave that game file into my Vassal module. So when I load the game, it will load with the correct save stuff. Anyway, this is how I build and test these things: is pull it up, click on some stuff, move them around, see if they work right, and then go back and fix it. So here's some things I've added to this. One of the cool things, this is actually a pretty simple game. You know, I don't know if simple's fair. It's still kind of learning it. Combat, still trying to sort that out a little bit. But it says it's like a 12-page PDF, and what's nice is it's actually maybe 9 pages of rules. So there's the cover, you know, then it just tops right into the rules, and the rules actually stop pretty much right on about page 7 here. So like 6 pages of rules, and then some of that's optional rules, and then it's got designer notes and an optional solitaire. So this was another reason that I was interested in playing Winter Thunder versus saving up lots of money for the enemy action. It's had solitaire rules, but what I didn't know was it was solitaire as in you roll a dice to set your opponent's defensive stance for combat, which we'll talk about that in a second. And then some setup rules. So even though it says it's 12 pages, as you can see, you know, page 12 is the back of the rule book. Page 11 would be that. Page 10 is the scenario setup, and then page 9 is designer notes, the solitaire chart. So not much really, which is great. And the gameplay, I say it's simple, probably one of those like simple to learn but difficult to master. Movement is really easy to decide who goes. It's a chip pull system, and I really like that. So what I did was I made my chip pull cup. I like this because in the rules it says use a cup or use an upended helmet. So I went ahead and made my chip pull here a helmet. So I can pull out my counters, and then that tells me who goes first. Now there is an optional rule for the German player. He can, oh, you know what, I bet you that's what I had to do. Anyway, I just had another thought. It says that the German player can actually go ahead and do all of his units. He just decide which ones to activate instead of doing a random pull on the very first turn only, because that represents the surprise attack onto the allied units. So I'm thinking in my updated, what I'll do is I'll just have all the German units out of the pull cup. That way, yeah, because there's only like a couple American units that actually get to sit in here. The Germans get a lot of activity here, so I just stick the Americans back in. So I would just have these out, and that way the German player could then activate a unit, and when it's done he can flip it. Oh wait, he doesn't have to flip that. He would flip the corresponding unit. So like if I activated the 67th Corps, once I'm done, looks like I got the 66th in here twice. Yeah, I probably did that. So what I could do is just delete that one. I don't see a 67th, so let's open up the headquarters, Germany. Let's find the 67th. Here we go. So you got the 67th on the map. Got the 67th. All right, so we'll just save that again. Oops. And I probably don't have to put notes. I'm just used to putting that there. All right, so now when the German player goes, you know, he can activate his units in any order that he wishes, and then, you know, play would proceed from there. So the actual game itself is pretty simple. So, you know, once you've either drawn the chit or you're doing your, you know, selecting whatever unit goes, essentially if you activate a core, let's zoom in so you can see some of this a little better. If you zoom in, and 3 here, the 3 X's, that's the core command. So the command is just this flag. It has this 1 value is for defense. It's not, if it's in parentheses, you can't attack. But what you could do is you can activate up to 6 units, and they have to be within 5 movement factors away. And so you know, you would have to count your terrain towards a unit in order to activate it, pay the terrain costs to get there. The one thing that wasn't too clear for me is if road counts in your movement factors when seeing if you can, you know, activate another unit. So that would mean like a core could activate something really far out, but if it's just strictly talking the terrain of the hex, you're usually looking at 2 or 3 hexes out. Your core or an army could activate units. If you activate the army, then it can activate a core as a sub, and then that, you know, kind of gets like a little chain reaction going of units you can activate. Now units can only be activated once in a turn, so if I activated this 12th Panzer SS unit here with this core, I couldn't then activate it later with the army. So when your chit comes, a lot of it you know, it's just a lot of decision making of who do I want to activate now or save for later. Activating units is pretty simple. You can either do a strategic move, a tactical move, and then at the end of movement you can then initiate combat. And what's cool, more cool, is your, let's find some armored units. So your infantry, for example, they can do strategic movements. Now strategic movement means they move along a road. So these are some things that I'm learning. Strategic movement is you move along a road, and your movement factor then is like, you know, you can 3 hexes on a road for every movement point that you have, and here's your movement points of 3. Here's your combat value, and this P means poor experience, E is elite, and if nothing there, it just means it's a regular trained unit. So if I want to move folks really, really far, yeah, I guess the movement factor for activating your units doesn't count roads, because you have to use strategic movement to use roads. And so that means you can move really far. So when I was first looking at the game, I was like, why would I use strategic movement to start the game with? Well, you wouldn't. Your units cannot move adjacent to an enemy unit when doing strategic movement. Plus, if they get attacked by the enemy, they have a penalty on their combat, because strategic movement means you're like in columns and moving along the roads. Tactical would be you're in formation, you're moving off-road, you're prepared to fight. So in this first phases of the game, you probably are not going to need strategic movement at all. So that I learned right away just by playing is definitely something that you are going to use much later on when you might send reinforcements and you need to travel deep into you know, into the bulge, if you will. So if you need to get, let's just hit width real quick. So if I need to get from reinforcements from Prum all the way out here, I would then use my strategic movement. So in this first part of the game, most everybody will be tactical movement. And tactical movement, you don't have to mark your counter with tactical movement. Strategic movement has a marker because that's penalties for moving, and then your combat. Tactical movement then is just movement factors. So like your 6, you pay the, on your terrain chart here, it tells you how much movement points you expend traveling through the different types of terrain. And really it's pretty simple. There's like heavy woods, light woods, rough, if you will, then the clear, and you have towns and cities. Let's see. So when you activate your unit, and let's say, I'll zoom in again, if I'm going to activate like this, we'll come back here. So if we're going to activate the 67th Corps here, and in turn he was going to activate this guy. Well, let's find one that could actually move somewhere. Here we go. Let's say we're down here. See, to attack, you're going to be adjacent to folks. So the Panzer Layer here, they're not adjacent to anybody. These are all German units here. So I could, with, say, the 80th Corps, count out a 5 movement factor, so the Panzer Layer would be in range, and then he could use his 6 tactical movement points to pay to cross through some of this rough terrain. And then there's stacking limits. You can have like 2 divisions and then like as many support as you need. So I can move him up here, and then like still not close enough to attack. He's not adjacent. So if I had enough movement points, I could move Panzer Layer right up here, for example. Oh, he's got a unit with him. Do we want to bring the... Oh, the army couldn't go that far anyway. So he could drive his tanks out here. So once everybody's been activated that I want to move, they would move, and then those units that were activated for movement can then participate in combat. So some of this is just kind of keeping track of who's done what. So what they recommend is that you can actually rotate these units then, so you know who's activated. So I wouldn't, in a subsequent part of my turn, if I activated, say, the 5th Panzer Army, he couldn't go back and reactivate the Panzer Layer unit because they've already done something. So it is quite possible that you could probably have too many of these headquarter units in an area. So you know, part of the strategy for the German player is they have a lot of command. So it's where do you put these command units to command all the troops you have. On the other hand, the Allied player only started with 3 command units on the map, and then some of them are pretty far away from activating. So really this goes to show that the Allies were not prepared for this offensive. These folks are just kind of hanging out here in the wind, and then there's not a whole lot of command to get them to do anything. So once you have, let's say, expended all of your units you can activate with your army headquarters, you can then just flip them to the done side, and so you know that the 58th Panzer has done all it can do. Oh, there was even two headquarter units there. So once you have, like, let's say we were doing combat, if I had moved this guy up here tactically, so all my strategic movement, tactical movements done, I can then, of those units, declare the combat. So right here, for example, if I wanted, I could activate this stack here. They don't have to move, so this would give me quite a few units that I could attack this defensive stack with. They're in an improved fighting position. That's the IP, improved position. They have artillery with them, supporting them in the hex, which adds to the defense value that they have. You don't get to use them to go on the offensive, but if you're defending, you get a defensive bonus with your artillery. And then he's got a regiment here of infantry. So you would just compare your combat values with the combat values of your attackers. You come down here to the chart. So this is the thing that I'm trying to kind of master now, is what modifiers do I apply to combat. So essentially what happens is this unit, if I had my command unit activate all these units here to attack this guy's pretty much dead. What you do is you're going to roll a die 10, and you compare that with all the attack values that you have on all your different chits. So like here, I can't attack with artillery for the German player, which is that first one, but he has a 4. You can't see my finger pointing here, but he's got the 2nd Armored Division with him. That's a 4, and he would add +1 for elite on his attack. Then he's got 2 from the whatever 580th Infantry Division. Their poor training stat would subtract 1. So it's 4 plus 1 for elite plus 2 minus 1. So it's basically, that's going to be a 5 there for their attack strength. And then let's say this guy was attacking 2. So that's 8. And then you compare that with his defense of 1. Now there's no charts that say, 7 to 1 odds, but basically before we add in any other modifiers, what you do is you roll a die 10, and if you roll less than those combat factors, you take a casualty. So if the allied player who rolled a 3, which is less than the 5 combat factors he's facing from, well, what did I say? I had 2, 3. So let's say 8. Yeah, 8 combat factors here from these 2 stacks. I rolled a 3. That would be a casualty that he would have to assign. He doesn't have to assign casualties to the artillery. He would have to assign to like a division. But since there's only this regiment here, I guess he could assign it to the artillery. But if you flip it, you see that there's no reduced side. So artillery and regiments generally don't have a backside. They're toast. It's just the full divisions that have reduced sides. So basically one of these units is going to die based on the fact I rolled a 3. But before you roll the dice, though, that's where all these modifiers come in. It's not too terrible. It's not like a whole bunch. Like I said, some of them we already did. Here's one. If the attacking total combat factors is greater than 3 times the total combat factor defending the hex, you get a +1. The defender gets a +1. And that's important because that's +1 not to your die roll. That's +1 to your combat number that you're trying to roll under. So if I was 8 to 1, then the defender gets another +1 there. That means they would have to roll a 9 or under to be eliminated. So they have to roll like a 10 to be saved. I mean, that's pretty tough. If anybody attacking units are out of supply, so if I had out of supply units, then that would be a modifier in favor of the defender. And it says either if you're checking units poor quality or as strategic move marker, there's a +1. So that's why when I did the math here, the poor quality unit there was a penalty, if you will. Well, actually, a penalty for the attacker. It was good for the defender. It makes their the total combat factor easier to roll under. I'm probably just kind of babbling through this, but once you actually kind of get in here and look at these modifiers, it's not bad. I mean, there's only a handful of modifiers that affect the attack. But here's the important part right here. This is the big one. Oh, and then there's your terrain modifiers for combat too. So here's what you have to do first. When you fight, there's these chits, and for me solo, I don't need the chit so much. I just kind of look and as an attacker and say, well, I'm going to use a frontal attack or a balanced attack. And then in the book, it has a dice roll chart you roll on to randomly decide which defense the defender will use. In a 2-player game, the opposing, you and your opponent, the attacker would draw an attack chit. You don't draw it randomly. You would pick from the attack chits which attack you want to use, and then the defender would secretly pick which defense he wants to use. And the thing about this is kind of weird because it's like, how do you know which one to pick? Because this is all kind of randomized in a way that you can't really call it a rock, paper, scissors style of combat. It's just basically you as the attacker saying, well, I'm going to try and do a balanced attack. Like, it doesn't even really define what exactly these different types of attacks are. So a balanced attack means, I don't know, blitz made sense because your armor unit has a chance to push through if they're successful in the attack. Then there's a frontal attack. I'm not sure how different that would be from a balanced attack. And then there's infiltrate, which means you're being more sneaky about your attack, but they're not really defined. It's just you pick one, because then based on the defense of your opponent, you would cross-reference the chart, and that's going to tell you up here what modifiers go to the attacker and defender as far as modifying the attack points here, your combat factors. So for example, if I chose frontal attack, and if I, as a solo player, rolled on the chart and found out that my opponent is going to use the stand fast, that means the attacker has a penalty of +3 on his combat factor when he rolls. So that makes the number he has to roll under higher, roll under even bigger. So if all my combat factors of the opponent, like for example here, let's say that's what's happening up here. My opponent has a combat factor of 1. And he gets 1 defending with the artillery. So that's 2. So as the German player, I would have to roll, without looking at terrain or anything like that, I'd have to roll a 2 or under with a 10-sided die to have one of my attacking divisions take a hit. But if I did the frontal attack and the Americans were defending with steadfast, I would add 3 to that combat factor. So now I have to roll a 5 or under. So that's why this is the kind of the random part. You can't really plan for this to optimize how your combat will be outcome. And I kind of like that. It's like the fog of war. As the planner of an attack, you're never quite sure what the defender will do or how he's laid out. You might know what units he has there, and then as the defender, you don't quite know what type of attack the opponent is bringing. So all of us can see the counters here on the board, but we don't know what the other person is thinking in terms of what kind of attack maneuvering and formations will we encounter. So that's what makes this kind of interesting. Now, these numbers here modify your combat factor that you have to roll against. And then down below here, depending on what you pick, the A is advanced, meaning the attacker can advance through if he pushed back the defender, and the defender would have to retreat 2. So those tell you then how the combat will move those units back and forth. Does the defender have to retreat? Can the attacker advance? Kind of a thing. So, like I said, it's not terribly complicated. I probably explained it really poorly. You do have modifiers over here for your terrain that will modify that a little bit too. So, as I play, and like I said, this is the part I was learning, practicing, was combat. So in the beginning, there's very little in terms of strategic movement you have to do. You're pretty much going to use tactical movement just to move up some of your German divisions into a better position to attack the American defenders. And then it's the American that says you get to do some tactical movements, no strategic movements on turn 1 pretty much, because they weren't prepared for the attack. So you can do some tactical movements, but not a whole lot the American player can do in that first turn of the game. So it's not bad. It's not bad. It starts you out kind of easy because really, like I said, just move up a couple units. Then you get to try your hand at making sure you get your correct combat factors in, roll your dice, see if you take casualties. As you take casualties, you're flipping stuff. I did put in a casualty collection point here. I was thinking about making one for Allied and one for the Axis, but I thought, it's no big deal. I mean, if one side of this here, I'll put all my, wiped out units. And wiped out units are important because, wherever he was, is you get to rebuild units later on. For every 6 destroyed infantry units or divisions, not infantry, but just divisions in general that you have over here, I think it's like 5 or 6, you then get to take one of your reduced strength units and you can flip it to a full strength. Basically what it's saying is, out of these wiped out units, it's your army is basically taking all the survivors, scraping them together, and then reinforcing a unit that's on the map board already. So once a unit comes over here to the cemetery pile, if you will, they can't be rebuilt and they cannot re-enter the game. But every, I think it's 6, every 6 dead units, you then get to bring one reduced unit back up to full strength. So there's the casualty collection point. Then I also threw in Here's the reinforcement chart. I just stuck the units there. But basically you have your first turn and then your second turn. You know, here's the units that would come on. So the Americans really start to bring on lots and lots of reserve units. And then you'll see that the German player doesn't get as many reserve units because they pretty much committed everything up front. So as the German side wears down, the Americans are going to get a lot of reinforcements. So I haven't played a full game yet, so this will be interesting to see how it plays out. You do have air power as the Allied player because they had air superiority. On the days that say clear, the German player cannot do any strategic movement because the air power is out shooting stuff. So there's a stretch, about a week of clear days that the German player has to do all tactical movement, and then the rest of the time they can do some strategic movement. Plus then as the Allied player you get these air points. Air points you can then spend to do different things. I haven't got that far. I read it once, but since I haven't had the need for air points yet, I haven't really played with it. Still just trying to figure out how to get my combat factors. But that's the basics of the game. I mean, it's pretty good. It's my first operational level game, and I tell myself it's not too complicated, but I know I'm probably doing the combat factors not 100% correctly. But that's okay. You know, it's all part of the learning. As I play through it more, that will get better in time. But at least the basics of the game is here. I got all my counters. This is something I had to relearn how to do. So if I put, let's say, a unit did strategic movement, and let's say another division did, let's do an armor unit. Oh, exploit. I didn't talk about exploit. But they have a thing where these armored units, you can activate them for an exploit. And basically what that means is after all the strategic movement and tactical movement is done and those combats are resolved, then units that were marked for an exploit then get to act. So that means if you move some of these guys and they whittle down the defenders, you could then bring your armored units up or the mechanized units up to try and maybe finish off. Basically they're taking advantage, they're exploiting the situation. So I thought that was cool. So if you play the game, let's say this guy was out of supply, it says at the end of the turn that you then remove all these markers. And I borrowed this from my East Front game, the clearing counters. I figured out how to clear counters even easier. It took a long time to figure it out, but I got a better way to clear these markers. So now I've got a button here I can clear. Here it is. I can clear out all those different status markers that go away at the end of a turn, and then I can just, you know, put everything kind of right back so we can then start moving units again. So not bad, not super complicated. Seems there's less rules and mechanics to it than say like the old school tactical East Front. So maybe a gateway game for me into operational stuff. Plus it's my first West Front game. Almost everything I play is East Front, so this will be my first West Front. You know, maybe I'll start expanding out to the other theaters. But the Battle of the Bulge just seemed pretty good to start with, and this didn't seem overly complicated. So if I can get this down and play this a little bit more, maybe that will ease me into the other games like the enemy action, play that on Vassal. But that's probably enough rambling. Just wanted to share a couple things that are going on with me as far as wargaming, show the new module that I'm sticking together here for Vassal, and let you know that East Front will be delayed before I put that out. But once I do some playthroughs of Winter Thunder here, what I would like to do, let me pull this back up. What I would like to do, and I have to work this out with the wife, is over the next few days here in about a month. This gives me some time to practice the game out, is I would actually like to play like one turn on each day as it happened here, as kind of a tribute to the anniversary of the Battle of the Bulge, since that'll be played over the 16th. The game here goes to January 3rd, so I was thinking I might just record a turn each day as it happened and then post that, just to kind of follow along with the historical battle. And that'll start in about a month, so that gives me a little bit of time to get the game sorted out and learn how to play it. And then that'll let me do short recordings and not one huge recording of the game, but just do little snippets every other day. Since the game turns represent 2 days, that would give me a day to record and then like a day to post it. And so I thought that might be fun, just to kind of follow up on a historical matchup for the Battle of the Bulge. And started out with Winter Thunder, and then if we feel pretty good with this, we can look and see if you guys have any suggestions for other games that do the Battle of the Bulge. Maybe you have a better suggestion, maybe a more easier game to learn, or one that you think just plays better than Winter Thunder. But as for me right now, this is the one we're going to try out first. So thank you so much for watching, and if you have any comments or Vassal programming tips, tricks, go ahead and share that too, and I'll talk to y'all later. Thanks.